The night in Egypt throbbed with the beat of drums, a relentless rhythm accompanying the groans of Hebrew slaves beneath their crushing burdens. Whips cracked without mercy. Egypt, the land that had once saved them from famine, had become their cruel prison. Their cries, a chorus of despair, rose under the heavy hand of a pharaoh who feared their swelling numbers. And in his escalating fear, he issued a brutal decree: every Hebrew boy born shall be thrown into the Nile. Terror swept through the homes of Israel. Mothers clutched their newborns to their chests, their hearts heavy with love and dread, while fathers stood helpless. Yet, in one modest home of the tribe of Levi, a woman defied the decree, giving birth to a son. For 3 months she hid him, silencing every cry, trembling at every ominous footstep. But she knew her desperate secret couldn't last. So, one morning, with a mother's desperate ingenuity, she wove a basket from reeds, sealed it with tar, and tenderly laid her son inside. She placed the basket among the rushes of the Nile, a river teeming with crocodiles and death, a watery grave for countless Hebrew boys. But as the basket floated gently down the current, a whisper of faith escaped her lips. "Into God's hands, I surrender you." That very same morning, by a twist of fate only God could orchestrate, Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe at the river. Her eyes fell upon the strange bundle caught in the reeds. As she drew it in and opened the basket, the baby began to cry, a tiny sound that stirred something profound within her heart. "This is a Hebrew child," she whispered, "but I will raise him as my own." This child, who would one day defy kings and split seas, grew up in a palace of gold. He was named Moses, meaning drawn out from water. Though he dressed like royalty and was educated in the ways of Egyptian war and wisdom, his soul whispered a different truth. He was not Egyptian. He belonged to a different people. As Moses grew, he couldn't ignore the suffering of the Hebrews. One day, he ventured out and witnessed an Egyptian taskmaster mercilessly beating a Hebrew slave. Rage boiled inside him. No one was around, no witnesses. Moses stepped forward, and in a flash, the Egyptian was dead. Heart pounding, Moses buried the body in the sand and walked away. But the desert keeps no secrets. The next day, he tried to break up a fight between 2 Hebrew men. One turned to him and sneered, "Who made you our judge? Will you kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses froze. The truth had spread. Pharaoh would soon know. Fear seized him, and he ran away from the palace, away from the people he was meant to save. He ran until the sands of Egypt gave way to the wilderness of Midian. In Midian, Moses found shelter. He married Zipporah, daughter of Jethro, the priest of that land, and became a shepherd. Days turned to months, years turned to decades. The burning fire of destiny seemed to fade, smothered by the quiet life of a herdsman. But God had not forgotten. One ordinary day, as Moses led his flock across Mount Horeb, something extraordinary caught his eye. A bush, engulfed in flames, yet miraculously not consumed. He stepped closer, curiosity driving him forward. Then a voice, powerful and undeniable, spoke from within the fire. "Moses, Moses." He stopped in his tracks. "Here I am," he answered, his voice trembling. "Do not come any closer," the voice commanded. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Moses fell to his knees as the fire seemed to blaze brighter. "I am the God of your father," the voice declared. "The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob." Moses hid his face, afraid to look. The voice continued, firm but tender. "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries, and I have come to rescue them. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses could hardly breathe. "Who am I, Lord, that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should lead Israel out?" "I will be with you," God answered. "And this will be the sign. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship me on this mountain." Still, Moses hesitated. "If they ask who sent me, what name shall I give?" God's answer came like thunder wrapped in fire. "I am who I am. Tell them, I am has sent you." Moses bowed low. The man who had once fled Egypt, now stood face to flame with the creator of the universe. He had no army, no title, no power, only a shepherd's staff and a divine mission. But that, he understood, was enough. Moses descended from Mount Horeb with the fire of God still burning in his chest and the weight of an impossible mission pressing on his shoulders. The desert wind howled as he journeyed back to the land he had fled so many years ago, back to Egypt, back to the empire that once raised him and now wanted him dead. But this time, he wasn't coming as a prince or a fugitive. He was coming as a messenger of the Almighty. He was not alone. God had sent Aaron, his older brother, to be his voice. The two brothers reunited, their eyes locking with an understanding deeper than words. Together, they marched toward the heart of Egypt, where Pharaoh sat on a throne of gold and arrogance. Inside the palace, the air was thick with incense and pride. Pharaoh lounged like a god among men, draped in silks, surrounded by courtiers, magicians, and warriors. He looked upon Moses and Aaron as nothing two ragged men with sunburned faces and desert dust clinging to their robes. Then Moses raised his staff and spoke, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may worship me in the wilderness." A hush fell over the room. Then Pharaoh laughed a cold, dismissive laugh. "Who is this Lord that I should obey his voice?" He sneered. "I do not know your God, and I will not let Israel go." Pharaoh turned to his taskmasters. "If the Hebrews have time to dream of freedom, they clearly have too much free time," he declared. "From now on, give them no straw for their bricks. Let them gather it themselves. But do not reduce their quota." The burden grew heavier. The people groaned louder, and their anger, fueled by despair, turned toward Moses. "You said God would deliver us," they cried, "but things are worse than before." Moses turned to the Lord in anguish. "Why have you sent me? Ever since I spoke to Pharaoh, the suffering has only deepened." But God answered with unwavering resolve, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. With my mighty hand, he will drive my people out." So Moses and Aaron returned to Pharaoh's court, this time with signs in their hands and fire in their eyes. Aaron cast down his staff and it became a serpent. The court gasped. But Pharaoh smirked and signaled to his sorcerers. They threw down their rods, and they too became serpents. But then, in a terrifying display, Aaron's serpent swallowed theirs. The magicians stepped back, uneasy. Pharaoh, unmoved, turned away. "Nothing but parlor tricks," he muttered. His heart remained hard. Then came the first blow from heaven. At the Nile, Moses struck the river with his staff. The waters turned to blood. Fish died. The stench filled the air. The people could not drink. But Pharaoh's magicians mimicked the miracle, and Pharaoh hardened his heart again. Next came frogs, millions of them. They emerged from rivers, ponds, and canals, filling homes, beds, ovens. Pharaoh begged Moses to ask God to take them away. Moses prayed, and the frogs died, piling up in grotesque heaps across the land. But when the relief came, Pharaoh's heart hardened once more. Then came gnats. Aaron struck the dust, and it rose into the air and became a living swarm. Tiny insects covered man and beast alike. The magicians tried to do the same and failed. One of them whispered, trembling, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh would not listen. Then came flies. Swarms darkened the sky and invaded everything, but not a single fly entered the land of Goshen, where Israel dwelled. Pharaoh panicked and offered a compromise. "Worship your God, but stay in Egypt." Moses refused. Pharaoh relented, then changed his mind again. Then came pestilence. The livestock of Egypt, horses, donkeys, camels, oxen, sheep all died. Yet Israel's animals remained untouched. Still, Pharaoh's heart remained like stone. Then came boils. Moses threw soot into the air, and painful sores broke out on men and animals. The magicians could no longer stand before Moses, but Pharaoh would not bend. Then Moses raised his staff again, and hail fell from the sky, fire mingled with ice. Fields shattered, trees splintered, homes collapsed. Egypt had never seen such a storm. Pharaoh cried out, "I have sinned. Plead with your God to stop this." Moses did. The hail ceased, and Pharaoh hardened his heart again. Then locusts, clouds of insects devoured what the hail had not. Every green thing vanished. Pharaoh called Moses in desperation. "I have sinned," he said. "Please remove the plague." Moses prayed, and a strong west wind blew the locusts into the sea. But again, Pharaoh changed his mind. Then came darkness thick, suffocating, unnatural. For 3 days, Egypt was wrapped in a shadow so dense no one moved. But in Goshen, there was light. Pharaoh summoned Moses. "Go," he said, "but leave your herds behind." "No," Moses replied. "We must take everything." Pharaoh's eyes blazed. "Leave now, and if you see my face again, you will die." "So be it," Moses said. "I will never see your face again." But God wasn't finished. Egypt had defied him. Pharaoh had mocked him. Now the final judgment was coming, one that would break Egypt and set Israel free. The night air in Egypt lay still too still, like a kingdom holding its breath. The scars of 9 devastating plagues still lingered in the land. Water turned to blood, frogs, gnats, pestilence, fire from the skies. Egypt was shattered, but the final blow had not yet fallen, and when it did, it would bring the empire to its knees. The Lord spoke to Moses with a solemn finality. "One last plague I will bring upon Pharaoh and Egypt. After this, he will drive you out completely. Not just allow you to leave, he will beg you to go." Moses summoned the elders of Israel and moved from house to house, giving precise instructions straight from the mouth of God. On the 10th day of this month, every household must choose a year-old male lamb without defect. On the 14th day, you must slaughter the lamb at twilight. Take some of its blood and paint it on the doorposts and lintels of your homes. Then roast the lamb and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Eat in haste, with your cloaks tucked in and your sandals on your feet. For tonight we leave. Children watched wide-eyed as their fathers painted their doorframes with lamb's blood. Mothers baked bread in silence. The people of Israel moved quickly, solemnly, aware that something monumental was about to happen. It was the beginning of something new and something terrible. At midnight, the Lord moved through Egypt. From the house of Pharaoh to the slave's hut, from the royal nursery to the barns in the fields, death came. The firstborn of every household fell lifeless. Even the animals were not spared. No cry had ever risen in Egypt like this. Mothers wailed, fathers collapsed. Grief tore through the nation like a storm. And then came the call Moses had waited for. "Bring Moses and Aaron to me," Pharaoh demanded, his voice hoarse with horror. By torchlight, they stood once again before the king, but this time there was no mocking laughter, no arrogance in his eyes, just despair. "Leave," Pharaoh said, barely above a whisper. "You and your people, go and worship your God as you have asked. Take your flocks, your herds, your children, take it all. Just go and bless me too." Israel had waited over 4 centuries for this moment. 430 years of slavery, of cries in the night, of backs bent under cruel master-sand. Now, freedom had come. The people gathered their belongings, their flocks, their children. The Egyptians, desperate to be rid of them, handed them gold, silver, and clothing. The Hebrews walked out not as fugitives, but as a nation, no longer slaves. The Lord himself led them, a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, guiding every step. But the story wasn't over. Pharaoh, shattered as he was, had not completely surrendered. In the darkness of his rage, he changed his mind once more. "What have we done?" he said to his commanders. "We let our slaves go." He summoned 600 of Egypt's finest chariots, along with his army. With war cries echoing through the valleys, Pharaoh pursued the Israelites into the wilderness. Meanwhile, the people of Israel camped near the Red Sea, their backs to the water, unaware that Pharaoh's fury was thundering toward them. Then, someone spotted the dust cloud rising in the distance. The sound of hooves, the clash of steel, fear spread like wildfire. "They're coming!" someone shouted. Panic surged through the camp. "Why did you bring us here, Moses?" the people cried. Were there not enough graves in Egypt? You led us into the desert to die. But Moses didn't flinch. Do not be afraid, he declared. Stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see now you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. The Lord spoke. Raise your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide the waters so the Israelites can go through on dry ground. Moses obeyed. He lifted his staff high above the waters, and then it happened. A wind began to blow fierce, relentless, roaring like a living force. The waters rose, towering like walls on either side, and between them a path emerged. The seabed, dry and solid, a road through the impossible. With hearts pounding, the Israelites stepped forward. They walked between walls of water, lit by the fire of God behind them. Mothers clutched children, elders wept, children marveled. Every step forward was a step away from bondage and a step into destiny. But Pharaoh did not stop. He drove his army straight into the sea after them. Chariots roared through the path, weapons drawn. But then the Lord fought for his people. Wheels jammed, horses panicked, confusion spread among the Egyptian soldiers. The Lord is fighting for them, they cried. Turn back, but it was too late. God spoke to Moses one final time. Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may flow back. Moses obeyed, and with a mighty roar, the sea returned to its place. The waters crashed over the Egyptian army. Chariots vanished beneath the waves. Soldiers were swallowed whole. Pharaoh's pride drowned alongside his might. When morning came, the Israelites stood on the shore. The sun rose over a new nation, free at last. They looked back and saw the lifeless bodies of their enemies washing up on the sand. Then, as one voice, they sang, I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Women danced with tambourines. Elders fell to their knees. Children laughed with joy. That day, the children of Israel were no longer slaves. That day, Egypt was no longer their master. That day, the God of Israel made his name known to the nations. The sea lay calm behind them, its roar now a distant memory. The people of Israel had crossed over from slavery to freedom, but they were only at the beginning of a far more difficult journey. They walked into the wilderness with their heads held high, but freedom came with uncertainty. And with every mile, they would learn that their greatest enemy was not Egypt, but the fear and doubt within themselves. For 3 days they traveled through the desert without water. The sun scorched the earth. Lips cracked. Children cried. When they finally found a spring at Mara, the people rushed to drunkenly to spit it out in disgust. The water was bitter. Another cry of complaint rose. What will we drink, Moses? Did you bring us here to die? Moses turned to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. Moses threw it into the water, and the bitterness vanished. The water turned sweet. The people drank, astonished, refreshed, and the Lord spoke again. If you listen carefully to my voice and do what is right in my eyes, I will not bring on you the diseases I brought on Egypt, for I am the Lord who heals you. From there they journeyed to Elima, place of rest, where 12 springs and 70 palm trees offered shade and relief. But peace in the desert never lasted long. Soon they entered the wilderness of Sin, and the food they had brought from Egypt was gone. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs. Their trust in Moses and in God began to crumble. If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt, they grumbled. There we had pots of meat and all the bread we wanted. But you brought us out here to starve. Moses stood quietly, grieving the people's unbelief. But the Lord had already prepared an answer. I will rain down bread from heaven, he said. Each morning, the people are to gather only as much as they need for the day. On the 6th day they will gather twice as much, for the 7th is a day of rest, holy to the Lord. The next morning, the ground was covered in a strange, fine substance like frost. The people stared at it, puzzled. What is it? They asked. Moses answered, It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. They named it manna, meaning what is it? And so for the next 40 years, manna would fall from heaven every day except the Sabbath. It sustained them, nourished them, and reminded them day after day that God was still with them. Still, their hearts remained restless. When they reached Rephidim, there was no water again. And once more the people turned against Moses. "Give us water to drink." "Why do you quarrel with me?" Moses replied. "Why do you test the Lord?" But their complaints grew louder, more bitter. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to make us and our children die of thirst?" Moses cried out to God, "What am I to do with these people? They're about to stone me." And God, ever patient, gave a command. "Take your staff, the one you used to strike the Nile, and go. Strike the rock at Horeb, and water will come out for the people to drink." Moses did as he was told, and before their eyes, water gushed from solid stone. The people drank. Their thirst was quenched. But the place was named Massah, and Meribah, testing and quarreling, because there the people doubted if the Lord was really among them. Not long after, danger came from a new direction. The Amalekites attacked. Moses summoned a young warrior named Joshua. "Choose some men and go fight them. Tomorrow I will stand on the hill with the staff of God in my hand." As the battle raged, Moses stood with arms raised to heaven. When his hands were lifted, Israel prevailed. But when he lowered them, the enemy advanced. So Aaron and Hur stood beside him, holding his arms steady until the sun set. With Moses' hands raised and Joshua's sword drawn, Israel won. At last, they arrived at the foot of Mount Sinai, where it had all begun. The very mountain where Moses had once seen the burning bush. Now, a nation stood before it. Moses climbed the mountain once more, and God spoke. "This is what you are to say to the people. You have seen what I did to Egypt, how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, you will be my treasured possession, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Moses descended and told the people what God had said. And with one voice they replied, "We will do everything the Lord has spoken." 3 days later, the mountain shook. Thunder cracked across the sky. Lightning blazed. A thick cloud descended on the peak. A trumpet blast, unearthly and growing louder, sent tremors through the earth. The people trembled. Moses led them to the base of the mountain, but no farther. They were not to touch it. Then God descended in fire. Smoke billowed into the heavens. The mountain quaked violently, and the Lord spoke. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." The voice of God roared with power, each commandment delivered like thunder. No idols, no misuse of his name. Remember the Sabbath, honor your parents, do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not lie, do not covet. The people fell back in terror. "Speak to us yourself, Moses," they cried. "But don't let God speak to us again or we will die." Moses reassured them, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of him will keep you from sinning." And then, once more, Moses climbed into the fire and the cloud to receive the law carved by the hand of God, while below, a dangerous silence was growing. On Mount Sinai, where thunder still echoed and clouds wrapped the peak like a shroud, Moses stood in the presence of the Almighty. There, in the fire and silence, he received not only the stone tablets etched with God's law, but also intricate instructions for building a sanctuary, a holy tabernacle, where God himself would dwell among his people. Every measurement, every curtain, every gold clasp was part of a divine design. But down below, days turned to weeks, and the mountain loomed like a question mark. The people grew restless. They had seen Moses walk into fire, and he hadn't returned. Doubt festered, then fear, then rebellion. They gathered around Aaron, Moses' brother. "Make us a god who will go before us," they demanded. "As for this Moses, who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him." Aaron hesitated, but their voices grew louder, insistent. So he gave in. "Bring me your gold," he said. They handed over their earrings, bracelets, rings. He melted them down and shaped the molten gold into a calf, a lifeless statue, a god of their own making. When the image was done, the people erupted in celebration. Aaron built an altar and declared, "Tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord." And they rose early. They brought offerings. They ate, drank, and gave themselves over to wild dancing and revelry. The very people who had heard the voice of God now bowed to an idol they had created with their own hands. On the mountain, God saw it all. "Go down, Moses," the Lord said. "Your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have turned aside quickly from what I commanded them. I will destroy them and start over with you." Moses' heart pounded, but he didn't flinch. He pleaded with God, "Lord, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power? Why let the Egyptians say you brought them out to kill them in the wilderness? Turn from your anger. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember your promises." And God relented. Moses descended, carrying the 2 tablets, God's law, written with his own hand. But when he saw what was happening, dancing, shouting, the golden idol, something inside him shattered. In a fury, he raised the tablets high and hurled them down. Stone exploded against stone. God's covenant lay broken in the dust. He stormed toward the idol, tore it down, burned it, ground it into powder, and scattered it in the water. Then he made the people drink it. He turned to Aaron, eyes blazing. "What did these people do to you, that you led them into such sin?" Aaron stammered, "They asked for a god. I threw the gold into the fire, and out came this calf." Moses turned to the crowd, now stunned and silent. "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." The sons of Levi stepped forward, loyal, unwavering. Moses gave them a hard command, and they obeyed without hesitation. That day, 3,000 men died. Judgment had come from the hand of Egypt, but from within their own camp. The next morning, Moses climbed the mountain again, this time not to receive, but to intercede. "You have committed a great sin," he told the people, "but I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement." He returned to God, his voice low and broken. "They have sinned. They made a god of gold. But now, please forgive their sin. If not, blot me out of the book you have written." But the Lord replied, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out. Go now, lead the people. My angel will go before you, but when the time comes, I will hold them accountable." God struck the camp with a plague, and for days the people mourned. From that moment on, Moses met with God in a special tent outside the camp. Whenever he entered it, the pillar of cloud would descend, and the people would stand at their tent doors and worship. Inside the tent, Moses spoke with God face to face, like a man speaks with a friend. And then Moses asked for something no man had ever dared to ask. "Show me your glory." The Lord answered, "I will cause all my goodness to pass before you, and I will proclaim my name. But you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. I will hide you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand. Then I will pass by." And so it was. God descended in a cloud, and as he passed, he proclaimed, the Lord, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished." Moses bowed to the ground. God renewed his covenant and gave Moses 2 new tablets to replace the ones that were broken. When Moses came down from the mountain, his face glowed with the light of God. So bright, in fact, that the people were afraid to look at him. From that day on, he wore a veil when speaking with the people, removing it only when he stood before the Lord. Then, with trembling hands and willing hearts, the people obeyed. They brought offerings. They built the tabernacle exactly as God had instructed. Skilled artisans crafted every piece. Gold, silver, fine linen, acacia wood all came together as an act of worship. And when it was finished, the cloud of God's presence descended on it. Glory so powerful that not even Moses could enter. Day by day, the people were led by that cloud. By night, by fire. God was no longer distant. He was with them. But though the Lord was among them, their hearts still had far to go. The wilderness had just begun, and the test of faith was far from over. The days stretched into years. The years blurred into decades. The desert became home, and the wilderness their teacher. Led by a cloud by day and fire by night, the children of Israel wandered under the watchful eyes of the God who had freed them not to punish them, but to prepare them. What began as a journey of escape had become a crucible of transformation. But old habits die hard. The people still grumbled, still questioned. Again and again they doubted God's provision and complained against Moses. One morning their voices rose again. "We have no meat, no bread, no water. In Egypt, we had everything, we were better off." Moses, weary from years of leading them, fell to his knees. "Lord, I cannot carry this people alone. It's too much for me." And God in mercy answered, "Gather 70 elders. I will take the spirit that is on you and place it on them, so you are not alone." Then he sent a wind. A storm of quail swept across the desert, covering the ground. The people rejoiced, feasting until they were full. But their greed turned to sorrow when a plague struck those who had indulged without reverence. Again they were reminded, freedom without obedience leads to ruin. Still, the Lord was faithful. Manna fell from heaven, water flowed from rocks, their clothes did not wear out, their feet did not swell. And when enemies attacked, God delivered them with power and signs. Every need was met, every day, a miracle. At last, they stood on the threshold of the promised land. After years of wandering, the land God had promised to Abraham lay just ahead. Moses chose 12 men known from each tribe to go and explore the land of Canaan. For 40 days they scouted the land. When they returned, their arms were full clusters of grapes, so large they needed 2 men to carry. Figs, pomegranates, milk and honey, just as God had said. But 10 of the men spoke words that poisoned hearts. "The land is rich," they said, "but the people are giants. Their cities are fortified. We are like grasshoppers in their sight." Fear gripped the camp. "Let's go back to Egypt," they cried. "Let's choose a new leader and return." Only 2, Joshua and Caleb, stood firm. "The Lord is with us," they pleaded. "Do not rebel. Do not be afraid. We can take the land." But the people picked up stones to kill them. Then the glory of the Lord descended. "How long will these people treat me with contempt?" God thundered. "They've seen my signs, my wonders, yet they still do not believe. Not one of this generation will enter the land, except Joshua and Caleb." That night, sorrow blanketed the camp. Israel had come so close only to turn away. God declared, "You will wander in the wilderness for 40 years. 1 year for every day the spies explored the land. This generation will pass away. Your children will inherit the promise." And so it was. They wandered, and with each passing year, the doubters died and a new generation rose that had never seen Egypt, only the provision of God in the wilderness. But even now, rebellion lingered. A man named Korah, along with 250 leaders, challenged Moses and Aaron. "You take too much on yourselves," they said. "We're all holy. Why do you exalt yourselves above the Lord's assembly?" Moses fell face down before God. "If these men die a natural death," he declared, "then the Lord has not sent me. But if the ground opens and swallows them alive, then you will know they have treated the Lord with contempt." As he finished speaking, the earth split open. Korah and his followers plunged into the depths. Fire came down and consumed the rest. The ground closed over them, and fear fell over the camp. The Lord had spoken. The years passed. The time came to approach the promised land once more. Moses climbed a hilltop and looked out over the plains of Moab. Jericho glimmered in the distance. Beyond it, Canaan so close now. But God spoke gently to his servant. "You will see the land, but you will not enter it. Because you did not honor me at Meribah, when you struck the rock in anger, you will die on this side." Moses did not argue. He had walked with God for decades. He had seen his power, spoken with him face to face, and now he accepted the end of his journey. He gathered the people once more. Thousands stood before him, children who had been born in tents, warriors who had grown up beneath a pillar of fire. He spoke to them not as a commander, but as a father. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love him with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. Teach his laws to your children. Talk about them at home, on the road, when you lie down, when you rise up. Do not forget him when you enter the land of plenty. Remember, it was the Lord who delivered you." He reminded them of the covenant, the commands, the blessings and the curses. "Obey him," Moses urged, "and you will live long in the land. Disobey and you will fall." Then he called Joshua, the one chosen to succeed him. In front of all Israel, Moses placed his hands on Joshua and said, "Be strong and courageous. The Lord himself goes before you. He will not fail you. Do not be afraid." Finally, Moses climbed Mount Nebo alone. The wind blew gently as he looked out one last time over the land promised to his people. He saw the valleys, the fields, the river. He saw the future, what he had lived his whole life for. And there, in the quiet, with no one else around, God took him home. Moses died as he lived in the presence of God. The Lord buried him in a valley, and no one knows where. Israel mourned for 30 days. But the story did not end. Joshua took up the sword. The people followed him across the Jordan. The land was before them, and the legacy of Moses burned bright behind them. Never again would Israel know a prophet like Moses only, whom the Lord knew face to face.